Curses are a result of the negative energy flowing out of people. This is the definition of the eerie phenomenon of curses that defines the world of Jujutsu Kaisen that we are given to work with at the beginning of the story. In every sense, it is a window into how the rules of the world function. In a different sense, the fact that something like negative emotions, something almost every human being experiences, is literalized and manifested, points at a commentary on that subject. What even are negative emotions? Are they something inherent to us? Are they a response evoked by our experiences that we can thank our environment for? What do our negative emotions mean for others? And equally as importantly, what do they mean for us? Power systems of most shonen manga are the instrument of some commentary of similar nature. Chakra and Naruto towed the line between a vehicle of conflict and a force of connection between people. Nen is a force that's part of, and in many instances, the driver of Togashi's socio-political commentary. I've spoken at length about the power system of Bleach and some of the things I think it signifies, and you can check those videos out in the description if you're interested. It would have been remiss of Gege if he hadn't used his power system for some kind of commentary. Thankfully he does, and in my opinion, he does it quite well. Curses are, to put it simply, a representation of karma. The intent behind your actions and the energy you put out into the world determines what the world gives back to you. Causality given form. With this simple idea being the resounding truth that is reiterated over and over again in the series, the definition we received at the beginning falls a bit short of fully encapsulating the nature of curses. In fact, it may even border on being incorrect. The nature of something as central to a story as curses are to JJK is something that we have been learning about over time as the story progresses. In fact, I'd say one of the primary pursuits of the story is the exploration of what a curse even is. And to be clear, I'm talking about curses very generally, not just cursed spirits. Cursed energy as a power system is just one of the many avenues present within the story for the exploration of a curse as the fundamental reality of this world, and almost every character in this cast is cursed in some way. The idea of a story providing a face value definition of something that goes on to take a new shape with later context is one that's very common, although the same idea in JJK isn't as subtle as I thought it was, but rather something that seemingly gets a bit lost in translation. It's present right from the very first chapter. The word Noroi is used as a catch-all when referring to curses. For the curse Yuji is fighting, when Megumi tells him curses can only be exercised by curses when talking about cursed energy, and Yuji referring to his grandfather's last request as a curse. But later we get the word Jurei to refer specifically to cursed spirits, and there seems to be a distinction between how the stronger, more sentient spirits are viewed in comparison to the weaker blobs of cursed energy that go around haunting people. My main point is the term Noroi can refer to many things. This is where the confusion as to the status of Ryomen Sukuna comes from. He is the king of Noroi, which is an overarching term referring to the concept of curses as a whole. He is not a Jurei or cursed spirit himself. When Megumi says to Kamo, we just have to curse each other, or when Mahito told Yuji, let's curse each other to our heart's content, or when Nanami changed his last words to avoid cursing Yuji, they obviously weren't referring to literal cursed spirits or even cursed energy. It's the other kind of curse they were talking about, or hex for a more accurate English equivalent. This is a world whose rules allow for mere words and even unexpressed emotions to become curses on people that can then drastically alter their fate. Gege treats this subject with the nuance it needs, and I hope to acknowledge that nuance with the respect it deserves. Speaking of respect, I want to thank Raid Shadow Legends for sponsoring this video. You've probably heard of this game before, and like most people do, you've probably formed an opinion on the game without playing it for yourself. I know I did, until I finally gave it a shot. One of my favorite things about Raid is how the game has been designed to accommodate all kinds of gamers. If you have a lot of time to spend, you have endless amounts of content to experience. If you're someone like me who feels guilty after spending too much time gaming, there are several features built into the game to prevent you from time grinding, like auto battle. And best of all, this is a game that is free to play for everybody. There's no ceiling you reach where you're forced to pay money just to progress. There are several endgame players who haven't spent a penny on the game. And there's honestly no better time than now to start playing Raid. To celebrate the arrival of spring in Teleria, the world this game takes place in, there is currently a spring hunt minigame taking place. Once you complete the minigame, you'll win several prizes not just in the game, but you could even win real world prizes like a gaming console or an Amazon gift card worth 10,000 $100,000. Simply enter your player ID at springhunt.plarium.com. The link to that is in the description below. Additionally, you can get the legendary chronicler Adeline simply by logging into Raid on 7 different days before July. If you use my QR code on the screen right now, you'll receive an insane starter pack starting with the epic champion Tyrell from the High Elves faction, who is considered one of the greatest in the game, as well as one of the strongest supports, the epic Rector Drath, once you reach level 25. These are only available if you use my custom link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen. Using the promo code SPRINGHUNT24 will give you a bunch of extra bonus gifts, which I won't tell you, so you can find out and be surprised for yourself. I've been having a blast playing Raid. Come find me in the game under the name radman_v2 and join my clan, the Gote71, so we can become legends and dominate the world of this game together. There are massive gaps in our knowledge regarding how the world of Jujutsu Kaisen works at the very root of it all. For instance, what is the true essence of cursed energy? What are the factors that go into determining the birth and awakening of a Jujutsu sorcerer? How exactly do cursed spirits spawn into the world? Cursed energy seems to be an autonomous entity, this force with a specific design that everything must adhere to, like the active law of the universe. Break a binding vow placed with another, and you will suffer from drastic consequences. The King of Curses himself doesn't even break these vows. Descriptions of Black Flash attribute cursed energy with some degree of agency. And then you have things like Judge Man, an incarnation of cursed energy who has nigh omniscient capabilities. It knows the exact date, time, and location of Yuji entering a pachinko parlor despite being underage at the time. It even somehow manifests photographic evidence of Yuji from a local security camera. How exactly that's possible, I have no idea, but cursed energy can make it happen. Those with full heavenly restriction like Maki and Toji are considered anomalies who escaped from cursed energy. Tengen, arguably the most knowledgeable character in the series if it isn't Kenjaku or Sukuna, refers to Toji as a human being who escaped fate through the power of restriction and thus broke everybody free from their destinies. What does that even mean, looking back at that line now? What is the true nature of cursed energy? What are all these weird, trippy sequences that blur the line between dream and reality? They happen far too often for me to believe it's just visual spectacle. Was Kenjaku being literal here? How the hell does Granny Ogami reincarnate people, summoning the information of their souls? Where does this information reside? These are just a few of the gaps in our knowledge as it stands, and even though I don't think everything will be answered, I expect a lot of it to be tackled in the near future of the manga. Gege has painted a picture of cursed energy as an active entity within the world, fate given form, karma and causality taken shape through the negative emotions of humanity, or simply, curses. Non-sorcerers, sorcerers, and cursed spirits. Kenjaku posits that these are all possibilities of cursed energy in the form of human beings. While we can't take his word for it completely, that's a good starting point. Now let's look at how the world and its rules work. Sorcerers are human beings who are supernaturally aware and have access to their innate cursed energy that all humans contain, and this includes both Jujutsu sorcerers and curse users, who are people that use their powers for criminal purposes. Non-sorcerers are the ignorant, the supernaturally unaware humans who live their normal lives in Japan, and their negative emotions gathers like sediment and takes form as cursed spirits. These are the 3 forms of human beings we know of, with Kenjaku's driving motivation being his belief that there must be more to human potential, or in other words, to cursed energy. That's why he pursued the merger, to create a 4th form of human existence and witness new heights. I do still believe this will happen and thus be the source for much of the answers we receive pertaining to the nature of cursed energy, but you can watch this video at the top right of the screen if you're interested in why. While Kenjaku firmly believes that cursed energy, and to a broader extent curses as a whole, inform humanity, we know for a fact the opposite can also be true. Cursed spirits are the literal manifestation of human emotions, born of collective negativity. Every curse technique corresponds with its user's soul to some extent, which is why domain expansions function as the exertion of one's soul, one's inner domain, into reality. Of course, if you're not Kenjaku or Sukuna, that domain is still contained within a barrier, but we'll get to that later. We even have cases like projection sorcery arising due to humanity's technological advancements. This technique would not exist if not for the discovery and understanding of animation as a concept. It completely hinges relies on that knowledge. Hakari would not have his curse technique if pachinko didn't exist. Charles's curse technique is literally centered around manga panels, and it allows him to see into the near future. And then there's the fact that negative energy is such a loose metric for the law of the universe, one that is guaranteed to manifest differently depending on the individual. Love is the most twisted curse of them all. These are Gojo's words from volume 0. Love is not inherently negative, at least that's not what my mind goes to when I think of love. Some of you watching probably disagree, but my underlying point is that negative energy exuding from people will always manifest differently. Gojo believes love is the most twisted curse, which tells us these emotions don't always need to be negative, but as long as they're manifested in that way, they can turn into curses or cursed energy. Thinking of cursed energy as just negative emotions or cursed spirits as just the product of collective negativity can be misleading, because what even is negativity? What one person fears, another may crave. What one loves, another may hate. It's inherently subjective, as the story itself goes to great lengths to showcase. The world is designed to function like a mirror. You literally get what you put out into the world. This becomes most interesting with the figurative curses, which can be a request, a self-proclaimed goal, dying words of advice, or even words intended and designed to haunt someone. And yet Nanami, or at the very least some kind of projection of Nanami existing in Gojo's dying vision, also believes curses can save a person, just like Jujutsu. This line seemed to confuse a lot of people, but in my opinion it's really rather simple. Nanami is perhaps the biggest victim of the Jujutsu sorcerer condition in the entire manga, and so the line makes a lot of sense coming from him. Sorcerers live to serve selflessly. They fight for the perceived greater good, to defend humanity from curses, and yet the power they draw from literally hinges on the buildup of their negative emotions. That is Jujutsu, using evil to fight evil. All of this is fairly simple to understand overall, but with all of it falling under the umbrella of cursed energy or curses, it can easily be robbed of its intended nuance. The curse is the backbone of Jujutsu Kaisen, and it is ingrained in virtually all aspects of Gege's storytelling, but especially in their presentation. The figurative kind of curse is hardest to understand mechanically. So far it's the most loosely defined, and yet I'd argue it's the most important kind. This kind of curse is not something explained to us, rather it is treated in the story as something everybody instinctively knows of, a type of curse that is ultimately completely bound to the individual. They typically appear as an internal thought. These are very personal curses. I previously explained how cursed energy is ultimately bound to how it is engaged with, how negativity is inherently subjective, and that probably applies best to these figurative curses. These words etched into the minds of these several characters that dominate their brain space. That's the main thing I want to talk about today. So the thumbnail of this video, black boxes are curses. Before you go on a tirade in the comments pointing to several instances of black panels in the series that don't fit this rule, let me explain. I can already see people telling me I'm doing too much, or Gege is just lazy so he likes to use black panels for visual impact, which may very well be true, but I promise you won't regret hearing me out. Think of this as a theory more than anything else. There's no actual way of confirming this unless Gege comes out and tells us, but hear me out. I've gone through the entire manga with a fine-tooth comb while researching for this video, and if I'm not wrong, it's quite easy to tell what the rules are to interpret which black boxes qualify as a curse. Obviously, not every single instance of text in a black panel is always going to signify a curse for that character, because these are personal things ultimately bound to how they are engaged with. These words have to be words that are framed to be on the character's mind in that moment. When a character is thinking about words they have heard in the past and this appears in a panel with a black background, those words act as a curse for them. If it's just a normal flashback, obviously that's not the case. I'm specifically talking about moments like this, this, and this. The logic behind this is rather simple. In terms of presentation, this is not narration, which appears in square or rectangular text boxes. This is an internal thought, something the character is thinking about, weighing on their mind in that moment. Chapter 120 is the quintessential example. We see several quotes from previous scenes of the manga contained in black boxes as Yuji has his breakdown after Sukuna finally gives him back control of his body. I'm wondering why the heck I have to be executed is a line Yuji himself stated, which would make this a self-imposed curse, something he nonchalantly said to Gojo in the second chapter, right before pondering on his grandfather's irritating last request, which is Yuji's biggest curse as it takes up 3 of those 5 boxes in 120. This page from chapter 2 substantiates this well. Yuji's words about knowing he's gonna die, aiming to be surrounded by others, overlapping a black panel with the quote from his grandfather. There is a clear tie between Yuji's dialogue and his grandfather's last request. And here are some more incredibly subtle examples of this curse. To help make things clearer, let's look at some examples that definitely don't qualify as a curse. This monologue from Hanami in chapter 45 has words in the bottom panel with a black background, but since the words are contained in speech bubbles, it doesn't count. These aren't words etched into their minds, these aren't words they're thinking about. This, dare I say, peak fiction moment for Panda unfortunately doesn't count either. There's a black panel, but the words are contained in a speech bubble. It is not an internal thought of words heard in the past. My guy Panda is saying this out loud. This panel from 126 is not a curse, it's just narration and speech boxes contained in a black panel. But this one, in chapter 113, Toji's second death, absolutely counts. He remembers the words of Megumi's mother, her last request of him to take care of Megumi, words that cursed him, and with the black panel we get an objective confirmation that Toji did in fact feel burdened by the responsibility left behind by his dead baby mama. That is what this presentation quirk can accomplish. The Toji moment gets even more impressive when the black and white dichotomy is taken into account, with white representing the absence of any curses. After all, everything depends on how you interact with the curse. Nanami's last words do in fact curse Yuji. By telling him he's got it from here, he burdens Yuji with the role of fighting in his stead, because that's how Yuji perceives those words. But Nanami left them intentionally vague so as to give Yuji a choice, the ability to decide for himself what he wants. He's got it from here. If he wants to run, go for it. If he wants to fight, so be it. But that's not how Yuji sees it, and that's also not the only curse Yuji has received from Nanami. In chapter 31, he tells him, "You are now a Jujutsu sorcerer," and in chapter 121, he recalls these words as he faces off against Mahito. But through the contrast of black and white, we can see how Yuji's agency here, the way he interacts with this curse, is a double-edged sword. On one hand, he is being weighed down by Nanami's words, but he's channeling that into a more positive energy. You are versus I am. Words of another versus words of the self. And the words are called back to once more, presumably for the last time, in 247. And the word I is deliberately framed in a white panel with no remembrance of the you, indicating to us that Yuji has fully overcome this curse and that everything ultimately boils down to agency. Let's look at some other examples. In chapter 120, during this monologue from Nanami, we get some fantastic visual storytelling within the panels these words are contained in. It's really deceiving because it looks rather simple at a glance, but if you really dig into it, it's hard not to see the intentionality in the visuals. The first panel is a vision of a beach as Nanami speaks of his wishes and what he really wanted. The second panel is a black box representative of a curse as he stops himself from dreaming and reminds himself of his responsibilities as a Jujutsu sorcerer. And the third panel is a cloudy sky as Nanami is almost ready to completely give up and embrace death. Chapter 221 gave us the long-awaited return of Satoru Gojo, and at the end of the chapter, we receive a direct callback to the conversation between himself and Yuji in the third chapter of the manga. Would you lose was a curse for Satoru Gojo. The most interesting case of this for me, and the reason I even felt like making this video, came in chapter 248, Sukuna's previous words framed in black panels. When this chapter released, I was pretty much gobsmacked. As someone who has had this interpretation of black boxes being a representation of a curse for a couple of years now, I read this scene as the king of curses having imposed a curse upon himself, and that has delicious implications for the future of the who's had this series in a headlock since 212. Reading this told me that Sukuna could possibly be going out sad. I'll probably make a separate video specifically on that, but on the topic of curses and cursed energy, what he has been doing in the recent chapters is worth discussing. Sukuna is bending the rules of the series like it's nothing. My guy is pulling out impromptu binding vows, figuring out loopholes in the laws of the universe as he runs the gauntlet of all gauntlets. This nigga is putting up fake Karakura Aizen numbers, and it has truly been Sukuna Kaisen since chapter 212. It's an interesting reversal. We got a weekly Shonen Jump main antagonist with plot armor gained from the power of solitude, with people suffering and being held back by their bonds. Gege said, "F the power of friendship, he probably grew up hating Fairy Tail. Regardless though, I know Sukuna in the manga lately is pretty controversial. I'm not here to discredit any criticisms of how his strength has been written, especially since Jujutsu Kaisen does aim to have a hard power system with very tight mechanics, as this video has gone to great lengths to showcase. I'm also not a power scaling YouTuber. I'm sure there are several videos out there explaining just how Sukuna is capable of doing all this from a mechanical standpoint. I'm just not really interested in getting into that myself. I do like analyzing everybody's favorite T-word though, and when it comes to themes, Gege has dipped their toes into some very interesting ideas, and over time, the story has slowly drifted into a territory of more abstract disorder, yet in a calculated way. There's a method to the madness. It hasn't sacrificed any logical integrity because Sukuna, and even Kenjaku to a lesser extent, are characters we can expect this from, based on practically everything about them. They have always been built like this, we're just getting to see them truly cook, or at least that's true for Sukuna. I still refuse to believe Kenjaku's dead, but we're just gonna ignore that before I go on a coping spiel and embarrass myself. Anyways, JJK has always played with interesting concepts. We're just seeing them unleashed like never before. Yuji was in a state of limbo between life and death speaking to Sukuna in the second volume of the manga. A binding vow was used to essentially bring him back to life. Ryomen Sukuna exists in Yuji because he was designed as the perfect vessel for the King of Curses by his parents Kenjaku, who aided Sukuna to split his soul into 20 cursed objects and orchestrated a 1,000-year-plus scheme to pull off the Culling Games in Japan with the ultimate objective of merging humanity with Tengen, and virtually everything surrounding Tengen is central to the nature of the world. Tengen, this deified being, an almost omnipresent entity comprised of cursed energy that fills the entirety of Japan. They can sense just about any event taking place. The barriers she created surrounds all of Japan, which is home to like 99.999% of all cursed phenomena on the planet. Cursed energy is literally being viewed as a viable power source by Western superpowers. The nature of this thing is pretty important, and Tengen is the cornerstone of it all. She's not just a reflection of Jujutsu society, but its linchpin, and the process of her essence being rejuvenated by a star plasma vessel, a necessary sacrifice, is perfectly emblematic of the sorcerer condition, the cog mentality. What have you been entrusted with is a punishment Jujutsu sorcerers must endure. They have to keep moving no matter what, and in turn rob themselves of any individual worth because they're just another piece of the big machine. Jujutsu society itself, represented by Tengen's barriers. Speaking of barriers, it's worth noting that they're pretty much the bread and butter of the power system. Domain expansions, simple domain, domain amplification, hollow wicker basket, even curtains. As I mentioned earlier, the domain expansion, the pinnacle of Jujutsu, is the projection of one soul onto the world. Normal people have to accompany this with a barrier, hence the domain in the name. But Sukuna and Kenjaku are not normal people, and they bend the rules to project themselves onto the world as they wish. This is a brilliant pointer to their understanding of cursed energy, to the real reason for their transcendent power. These guys are incredibly knowledgeable. And like I said, there's massive gaps in our knowledge as readers, with the only people capable of truly filling them being Sukuna and Kenjaku. Where the hell is this all going, guys? Will the end of the story truly be the eradication of cursed energy as Yuki sought? Is cursed energy fundamentally tied to those figurative curses I mentioned, those black boxes, in a mechanical sense? How would that even work? How would words somebody heard or even said at some point manifest as a literal curse? I don't know, but if anybody can make it make sense, it's Akutami Gege. The last thing I want to touch upon is probably the most crackpot in this video, which is already very crackpot, but one of the most fascinating things in Jujutsu Kaisen is when Gege decides to spice it up with the visuals and give us these dreamlike instances. Nobara's death, Nanami's death, Jogo's death, Gojo's death, Mai's death, and most recently, the death of Choso. All of these sequences are accompanied by interesting abstract visuals that you wouldn't be wrong to think are simply there to complement the scene visually. Expressive art that isn't actually accurate to what is going on, but instead used to elicit certain emotions from the reader. For now, that very well may be true. but this has happened far too many times for me to not dig deeper. Perhaps they're related to the cursed realm Kenjaku mentioned in 160, if that wasn't a translation mistake. If the space between dream and reality is a curse, and we can take this literally, then that means there's a realm, a location for curses to manifest. The existence of this realm would answer several of the questions I laid out earlier, like where Granny Ogami summons the information of a soul from. It would also explain why barrier techniques are pretty much the bread and butter of the power system, and why the three most powerful, knowledgeable, transcendent beings in this story are all highly proficient with barrier techniques. To further extrapolate from Kenjaku's statement about dreams and reality, the space between life and death being a curse too would not be surprising, which would explain all those dreamlike instances. In 259, the latest chapter, we got our latest trippy sequence that seems surreal or unreal even, with Choso's death. Eso and Kechizu are obviously not present because they're dead, but this is the same table from Choso's memories that never existed, which is another abstract sequence whose legitimacy we cannot confirm. Todo's memories as well. Are these things actually happening? Is Jogo seeing Dagon and Hanami in the split second before his death? Are Choso and Yuji actually having a conversation here in 259? Or is Choso just visualizing this before he passes? I think it's happening. I think it's real. It's happened way too many times for it not to be real. It would suck if this wasn't actually happening. But Gege doesn't seem to want to let us know how this works. There must be more here. Where is it all heading? What is the true nature of cursed energy? Hopefully I can come back to this video in the next few weeks or months with an answer. Until then, my guess is as good as yours. Let me know if you enjoyed this deep rabbit hole dive and have any thoughts or observations that tie into the things we discussed today. This video was not very conclusive. There was just a lot of ideas I felt like putting together and sharing. But for now, I don't have any concrete theories on where this is going. Honestly, I don't know. I don't know, man. What is Gege cooking? Whatever they're cooking, it's not gonna burn the kitchen down. It's gonna be an exquisite 5-star meal. I hope, I pray, I believe. Thank you very much for watching, and like always, have a fantastic day.